bodhisattvas. If you don't examine your own errors, you may look like a practitioner but not act as one. Therefore, always examining your own errors, rid yourself of them. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. If through the influence of disturbing emotions, you point out the faults of another bodhisattva, you yourself are diminished. So don't mention the faults of those who have entered the great vehicle. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Reward and respect cause us to quarrel and make hearing, thinking, and meditation decline. For this reason, give up attachment to the households of friends, relations, and benefactors. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Harsh words disturb the minds of others and cause deterioration, bodhisattva's conduct. Therefore, give up harsh words which are unpleasant to others. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Habitual disturbing emotions are hard to stop through counteractions. Armed with antidotes, the guards of mindfulness and mental alertness destroy disturbing emotions like attachment at once as soon as they arise. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. In brief, whatever you are doing, ask yourself, what's the state of my mind? With constant mindfulness and mental alertness, accomplish others' good. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. To remove the suffering of limitless beings, understanding the purity of the three spheres, dedicate the virtue for making such effort to enlightenment. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. For all who want to train on the bodhisattva path, I have written the 37 practices of bodhisattvas, following what has been said by the excellent ones on the meaning of the sutras, tantras, and treatises. Though not poetically pleasing to scholars, owing to my poor intelligence and lack of learning, I've relied on the sutras and the words of the excellent, so I think these bodhisattva practices are without error. However, as the great deeds of bodhisattvas are hard to fathom for one of my poor intelligence, I beg the excellent to forgive all faults, such as contradictions and non sequiturs. Through the virtue from this, may all living beings gain the ultimate and conventional altruistic intention, and thereby become like the protector Chenrezig, who dwells in neither extreme, not in the world nor in peace. Yeah, so good morning. This morning is Easter, the most important date in the Christian calendar. And it occurs to me, this teaching that Jesus was crucified and then rose from the dead, resurrected. From a Buddhist perspective, there's a great truth here. When we are living in our samsaric, our attachment to self, when self-grasping is sort of the lens through which we see everything. To give you an idea, yesterday we took the grandkids and Megan and obviously Gretchen and me up to the lake, walking around Lake Ontario. It's so wonderful there. And then went to, what's the place? Bill Gray's, I think it is. And you have this wild scene when you have like 6 different people ordering at once, right? So my daughter ordered a basket of fries instead of the little fries that come with each meal, a basket of fries. Well, we had this huge pile of French fries on our table, which of course we couldn't get through. Anyway, we took them home and I put them out in the woods, and I noticed this morning they were all good. Something was eating them. But I had fries in the mind, right? So this morning, driving to the Dharma Center, I'm at the red light on Culverin Park waiting to turn, and the car in front of me has a license plate, and it says, no fires. I don't know what that means, but no fires. But I read it as no fries. This is what we do all the time. We do it in a very limited way, in our little kind of minuscule attachments, you might say, but we do it in a bigger way. And this is the Buddha's discovery. We do it in a bigger way because this whole world, the way it appears to us, is like no fries. We're projecting our fears. We're projecting our aspirations. We're projecting everything onto this world. Now, the mind is king. And in a sense, the mind is not wrong, but whether it's valid or not, whether it's in harmony with its actual nature is the question. So this practice is one of purification. So we're living in a sense like this body that's subject to birth and death, to death especially. There's this phrase that is repeated in Zen monasteries during retreat at the end of the day. So people are getting ready to meditate through the night or whatever struggles they're going through. And it said, the question of birth and death. It's talking about the question. Great is the question of birth and death. Life passes quickly by. Birth and death, I learned later from scholars, is sort of a poetic expression meaning samsara. But the whole time I was involved in Western Buddhism, I never heard about samsara. So there's more detailed knowledge that we can get, and that's what's being offered here, this incredibly detailed knowledge, which allows you to explore every doubt that you have. So here we are in this body of birth and death, right? This body, this corrupted body. And then what happens? We can be resurrected. This is coming to full enlightenment. So this is hard to understand because in our ordinary world, all that sounds like impossible. The ordinary world we're walking around, there isn't even the idea of realization. So I've been looking at AI-generated explanations of various Buddhist topics. What's missing from it is realization. You can fill up the world with knowledge, but that's not wisdom. And what's critical for each one of us, where is our happiness? It's actually in our own realization. And that realization, you don't have to think that it's a million miles away. That realization can be simply your confidence that the Buddha wasn't drunk. He wasn't mistaken. He wasn't insane when he said each one of us is this Buddha nature. And it can be realized to the same degree that he did. So for that reason, he taught for 45 years. His initial idea was that I won't teach. It's just going to make things worse. The kind of corruption that we see in religious institutions, in the way that religion can be turned in a way that actually creates suffering rather than relieves suffering. So the Buddhist view is great because it includes religion and includes not religion. It's just talking about the mind. But the mind with a capital M, it's not the little mind that we're playing with all the time. The mistake that we have is that it's kind of looking at a movie. If you're in a movie in the old days, I don't know what it is now digitally, but in the old days, all these little individual frames of Marilyn Monroe, when they're played out one after another quickly, it looks like Marilyn Monroe is up there on the screen, and we project a name onto her, and then we expect all the qualities, whether we like them or dislike them, whatever it is. It seems real and it seems solid, but yet it's only individual frames, but appearing instantaneously one after another. So too, you can have the experience, and we all have, where it suddenly dawns on you. You're in the midst of a Sunday morning, say, driving your car, whatever. You're surrounded by all the appearances that are always there in your life, your family, your apartment, your house, your car, the immediate environment that you've known a million times. And all of a sudden, it's fresh and new. It's like it wasn't there before. I mean, it was, but you're getting closer to the nature of its reality rather than its mere appearance. Looks like someone walks across the street, looks like there's some entity going there solid, not changing. And yet we know, happily science has even told us, whatever it is, every cell in your body is replaced every 7 years or whatever it is. I can have the numbers wrong, but you understand, when I look at my granddaughters and I think there they are, 4 years old. And you look at a picture of yourself, a photograph at 4 years old. Where is that person? Why do we say that's you? Everything's changed. The whole world has changed. So Buddha saw into that, and yet he hesitated to teach because the teaching is subtle. We are so completely involved in our mind stream. And as things appear to be completely real, you can convince everybody this is all real. real in the sense of absolute. It is real in a way, just like our dream last night was real, but we don't see the dreamlike quality of our waking existence. So the Buddha hesitated to teach. Of all the different religious stories and foundations and starts, the Buddha didn't set out to start a religion, but nonetheless, the story of his initial experiences is something that's always given me confidence as a modern person. So the first person that he met, he's in this forest, this jungle in India, and he has the insight, okay, I will teach. The great gods of ancient India appeared to him and said, no, you have to teach. He said, there are beings who will benefit from this. So you must teach despite the so easily misunderstandings. So he's walking, and he had this psychically, he knew that his 5 former students, when he was on the ascetic path, teaching this tremendous asceticism, that when he discovered the middle way and he took a bowl of rice milk, that his 5 ascetic students rejected him. They thought that he was rejecting the spiritual path. So now, in the middle of this jungle where he had spent 7 weeks, 49 days, gathering his teachings, exploring the depths of mind, he spent 7 days, it said, gazing in gratitude towards the tree under which he sat. Think about that. All right, so he's walking out of the forest. He psychically knows that these 5 ascetics are now in a suburb of Varanasi, the oldest continuously occupied city in the world. So he's going to walk. It's like 100 miles, something like that, 100 kilometers, maybe, I'm not sure, to Varanasi to start his teaching career. He's walking through the forest, and the first person that appears to him is someone who is gathering honey. Just some guy who walks through the woods finding, bees, and then gets the honey and then collects it and sells it. And the man somehow recognized Buddha's presence. I don't know what you want to say about it, but he just took a blessing from the Buddha and went on. And then he walked further, and after some time met, I think, two other Brahmins, like Hindu teachers. And they were asking him about himself, because they too seemed to be noticing or moved by something, and asked him what he was. He said, well, I'm enlightened. Asked who he was, what he was doing, things like that. I'm enlightened. I've come to full enlightenment. And they said, well, sure, that's nice. And they walked on. It's always given me faith that the first people that met the Buddha didn't really appreciate what was in front of them. This is our nature. That actually, this is our situation, not our true nature. So he taught, and coming out of this body to awakening is like a resurrection. Now, I don't say that to my Christian friends because it sounds kind of impertinent or something, but there's tremendous truth in that teaching. Where the Buddhists go with an additional step is that each one of us is Jesus. This is blasphemy, to the Christian world, and I'm sure it would be to the Muslim world too. Theologically, this is the view of eternalism. And the good thing about eternalistic views, the Buddha listed 180 different eternalistic views in his time. The good thing about eternalistic views is that it believes in virtue. And so by the practice of virtue, benefit will come. If not this lifetime, next lifetime, whatever, exceeding their own kind of worldly view, you might say, of one lifetime, But the Buddhists believe that there's actual virtue in that. It's incomplete, but nonetheless, it's there. So that's a wonderful thing. And the truth, you can see how it's so tricky or dangerous or something, why the Buddha hesitated. Because, my goodness, it's not something that we're naturally aware of. Although this paradox of paradoxes is that we're aware of our Buddha nature all the time, but we don't recognize that we're aware of it. We rather dwell in the distractions of our secondary mind. So in the mind-only teachings, Yogacara, it's called, said to be 8 level of consciousness. There's eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, the 5 sensual consciousnesses. These in the Tantra, these are represented as a moon disk upon which you're sitting. Now, why a moon disk? Because the experiences of smell, of sight, of hearing is direct. And so it has the effect by just being in those, it's kind of like paganism or something, by being aware of those things, it cools the mind. If you're aware, it cools the mind like the light of the moon. If you're in ancient India, tropical India, that moon is, that light, that wisdom is cooling. We can accept it. It's not so strong that it burns you, that you don't want to look at it directly. Rather, it's the image of compassion. So those are the 5. And then the 6th level of consciousness is our thinking mind, our mind stream, what we read in the newspaper, what we see online, what we talk to other people about, what's going on our to-do list, all the stuff that's going through our mind. That's the 6th level of consciousness. But if you think about it, that is a reactive state. It is reacting to those 5 pure kind of experiences. You hear this bell. You can have the experience in meditation where the bell is struck to end the meditation. It's just this pure experience. But then, you can have the experience of your reactive mind. It's like, oh, he rang that bell too early. Oh, he rang it too late. Ooh, that's beautiful. Ooh, I don't like that. We need a new bell. I mean, all that reactive stuff. So we are living in a reactive state. We're not living in our actual experience. We drop our experience in a minute and instead are playing with all these secondary thoughts, which are, of course, not only secondary, but limited, because they're all filtered through this lens of self-grasping. The 7th level and the 8th level of consciousness, let's jump first to the 8th. The 8th is called the alaya consciousness. And this is one of those odd Sanskrit words that we actually are familiar with. Himalaya, the Himalaya. Him means snow, and alaya means the storehouse. So the storehouse of the snows is the Himalaya. But the alaya consciousness is the storehouse of what? All of our experiences. Because the mind is not subject to birth and death, we don't really have like an eternal existence, but an eternally existing kind of thing. Existence after existence after existence, which seem limited and seem to be just from birth to death. But when that process is repeated again and again and again, you can sort of get a rough idea of the idea of everlasting life. It's the attachment of life that has to put that everlasting life, that life on it. But rather, it's the nature of the mind, which is, well, we'll get into that. But nonetheless, this store consciousness, this alaya consciousness, we're unconscious of it, but it's all of our reactions are there. All of our experiences that we reacted to in a selfish kind of way, and I just mean a self-interested kind of way, they're all up there, just like tremendous potential. Now, the 7th level of consciousness is called manas, and it's thought of like a conveyor belt. So when we have some sensual experience, and then our thinking mind colors it, it labels it, it's either good, bad, or even indifferent, whatever. That impression, that seed, is then transmitted through the 7th level of consciousness, the manas, to our store consciousness. They're all up there. But the process works in reverse too. When the conditions in our thinking mind are there, those seeds can transmit back through the 7th level of consciousness to our thinking mind. And then they can even exist as sensual experiences. So we've got this samsara, this back and forth going back, this tremendous conveyor belt going from us into this vastness and the vastness back into us. Now, all of these are really unenlightened, but nonetheless, it's this dynamic process of which we are ignorant. We don't know about it. We don't see it because it's something more than our individualistic ego. So what do you do about that? Well, all these 84,000 different practices that have come down to us are to see into that process. Because once you know, it's different. Once you know, you can act intelligently. You can avoid. Now, this resurrection, there are levels to it, you might say. One is like the complete enlightenment of a Buddha, yes, but it's a gradual path. People go step by step. And one of the practices, for instance, which, Kempo has taught here, is this looking at what is the self? Let's go right to the core. What is the self that's grasping? We're seeing everything through this self-grasping lens. Is that real? What is it based on? And so you can go through these tremendous, to do it right, takes months and months and months of examination, but we get a taste of it here, even on a Sunday morning, where you look at your hand and you say, is that the self? Well, no, because I say my hand. What is the my? So you keep looking again and again and again and again. And it is a way for you to eventually convince yourself that the my, the I, is ungraspable. Buddhism is subtle. It doesn't say there's no my there, but the absolute entity we give to it, like this table being a solid thing, we can analyze the table, and it's not actually solid in its nature. But with this continuous intellectual investigation, you eventually get to a point where you've exhausted yourself conceptually, and then there's a leap into emptiness or pure experience, you might say. The Buddha said, in this body, 1 fathom high, is the universe and all the universes. Think what a radical statement that is. It's totally threatening to everything. All our attempts to build solidity, to build eternally, to, all the stuff that we do and all the stuff that we run away from in fear because it seems to threaten the things that we think, happiness is based on. So the Buddha gives this statement, within this body, 1 fathom high, it's the universe and all the universes. Just thinking about that statement is something that's very liberating because it takes us out of our ordinary, our ordinary mental rounds. And with this, the thing that's so remarkable too about the Buddha's teaching is that at his time, one of the prayers that we do, the 4 immeasurables, that is love, compassion, spontaneous joy, and then equanimity, the great impartiality. Those 4 principles were there at the Buddha's time. They were, pre-Buddhist teachings, you might say. When you see these visualizations of, say, Vajrakalaya has 4 legs, those 4 legs are the 4 immeasurables that he's standing on. But the Buddha gave them a new kind of understanding and a deeper kind of feeling. In other words, the idea was at that time that a great teacher was like totally away from, totally free from the world of appearances. Really nothing that could be done. You couldn't really relate even except in some simple devotional kind of way. But the Buddha took that back with great compassion. And so suddenly it said, for instance, and we have the remnants of that teaching too in his teaching, the state of an arhat or a conqueror. If you completely understand the emptiness of self, then suddenly you are self-liberated. But there's still this partial understanding or incomplete understanding of the world of appearances. And it said at some point you can rest in that state for truly an eon, a very long time. It seems like absolute peace. But at some point, a light comes from the heart of the Buddha to your heart, and you suddenly realize, oh my goodness, I'm free from suffering. And yet, all those sentient beings out there, they don't know that they are. And so that becomes an imperfection in your mind. It's not complete. But this was considered to be the highest spiritual state at Buddha's time. And many people in the world unconsciously still think of that. That's what it's all about, just getting out of Dodge. But for Buddha, it was re-entering Dodge. So this wonderful picture of, this isn't it, but you see these wonderful things from China of Buddha Amitabha, Buddha of infinite light. And he's looking over his shoulder. So he's attained to this complete liberation, but now his sole thought and thoughtlessness is all generated towards the liberation of sentient beings. And it's said to be sometimes like a mother seeing her child having a nightmare. The mother knows that what that child is experiencing is dreamlike, but it's totally real for the child. And she knows that. And she therefore has complete understanding of the child's suffering more than the child does. The child is lost in it, but the mother isn't. And also what comes with that kind of knowledge is the skillfulness of knowing what to do. It's like when my car breaks down, I got to be like a macho guy. So I put the hood up like it's still 1958. And I look in there as if I know what the hell I'm doing, And now it's like, oh my God, call AAA. But when someone comes who knows what they're doing, sometimes they fix things rather quickly and easily because they know right where to go. That's the nature of our mind. We really have everything that we need, but it's inoperable. We have suppressed it with, my desire for chocolate or my wanting to appear like smart or, all this stuff that we do. That stuff is not to be rejected. This is the genius of the middle way, the genius of the Buddha. You don't have to go off in a cave. You could practice when it says in the 37 practices, the practice of seclusion, where to cultivate seclusion, verse 3, by avoiding bad objects, disturbing emotions gradually decrease. Without distraction, virtuous activities naturally increase, With clarity of mind, conviction in the teaching arises. Cultivate seclusion. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. You can be secluded from your own insanity right in this body, right here, right now. And it's training. And if you've ever had the experience of trying to learn a skill or whatever, think of the first time I see my granddaughters learning how to write and a little one learning how to write. You remember what that was like? You just didn't know. And everything was kind of halting and everything was wrong and everything. But you just keep going. So the trick for us, the danger is that our mind is so fluid. I mean, you can't knock it down. And when you meditate, my God, you see this tsunami of thought and everything and distraction. It's just amazing. You do it for 10 minutes and you're exhausted. And then, a Lama throws you into a 10-day retreat and it's like you want to jump out a window because you feel so disempowered. And yet it is the simple confidence. So you can be up at Lake Ontario and you look out and what is the experience? Vastness. That's really, on one level, the primal level, that's all you can say about it. Vastness. This is when you talk about the nature of the mind. So the helpfulness of the Buddha's teachings, which, I have to say, I didn't hear about for 15 years, even as a practicing Buddhist, is the Dharmakaya, the vastness. You're just kind of at awe with it. It's just like nothing you can say about it. It's just vast. It's beyond our limited thoughts, our descriptions. It's just vast. The best we can do is we utter vast, but you can have that experience looking out over that lake. So this is nature of the mind, but also the nature of the mind, what we call Sambhogakaya, the body of bliss, is you realize there's quality out there. It's not just an emptiness. It's got this blue tone. And although that's form, it's nothing you can grab onto, and it sort of enhances the vastness itself. It just screams, but very gently, vastness at you. And then there's a beautiful wind coming, and the smell of and birds flying by. This is Nirmanakaya. It said that, the compassion rains out of the clouds of the Sambhogakaya so that even human beings can experience it in our own deluded state. In the Amitayas, the Long Life Sutra, all these other Buddhas in these different Pure Lands are praising our Buddha, the historical Shakyamuni, and saying, in the Pure Lands, it's one thing. The birds are speaking the Dharma. Everything is conducive to practice. There's no suffering there. That's the verse. There's no suffering there. But Buddha Shakyamuni undertook the difficult work of preaching the Dharma in the Saha world, the world of patient endurance. That's what Saha means, where everything is just kind of like, oh my, running downhill. He taught there. And so his accomplishment is so great. And back to the historical Buddha, he hesitated to teach. So in our own practice, this fathom high, where do you find all those universes? You can be out there, you can have the instruction, the vastness of the lake, the tone of beauty of the lake, than the actual physical experience of the lake. But you can meditate on like a seed syllable. Garambache, all the essence of all these Buddhas is the same, but he's given this teaching, this letter Hung, and you can go for years and it's just like you can't find that Hung, or you find it for a second and then it's gone. You're just so aware of the instability of the mind. But when the stability starts, interestingly, because this 6-foot body is the way to discover the vast universes. In a way, science has it backwards. They're trying to see all those vast universes. You get out the telescopes, and we put telescopes up in space, and we're seeing all the vastness. That's great. But somehow it doesn't relate to us, except to make us feel like a little crumb or insignificant. But Buddhism flips it around like it does everything. And out of that seed syllable, when there's some stability, what happens? The stability and the awareness starts to radiate out. And then it's like, pure vision. You are that visualized Buddha. It's no longer visualized. You're feeling that. And that's a stability. You're on the path. And with that kind of faith or confidence, in a sense, it never becomes easier, but you have confidence in it. So it's not as, there's not that doubt all the time, like maybe this doesn't work, or maybe this isn't me. Maybe one of the great Zen masters, he was an iconoclast. He was sort of not part of anybody's temple or anything. So he was controversial in his own day, but Bankei is his Japanese name. And he practiced horribly hard. And he came to great awakening. And although he had practiced in this kind of desperate manner, he was completely gentle in the teaching to his students. And he said, yes, yes, yes. But if you don't accomplish in this lifetime, next lifetime, you've taken 10 steps in the right direction. So we're on the opposite of a negative cycle. We're on a positive cycle. Everything's working. We don't necessarily see that in this dharmic way, but this is the greatness that we have in a lineage like this, because you meet Chetsang Rinpoche, you meet Gar Rinpoche, and because he lives here, we tend to have more interactions with Gar Rinpoche. But you can see that, oh my goodness, if this is the end result, or even a result on the way, you see the qualities of the teacher, and you think, oh, it'd be good for me. I should have some of those too. So there's confidence, and the teacher says, here, do this practice, which looks completely esoteric, and I don't like that practice. But still, what are you going to do? You have someone who you actually have confidence in, basically saying, trust me, do this. You do it, and you go step by step by step, and with an open mind, with not a skeptical, doubting mind, but an open mind, and you can, validate your own results, I guess. But nonetheless, we have incredible blessings here, because the world is so completely lost in its thought patterns, trying to find one thing after another, and always, always missing the boat. So that's, our own resurrection. It sounds completely blasphemous to say that each one of us has this, there isn't this irrevocable gap between creator and creature. We're going beyond, but validly beyond that whole kind of concept. And so, although there's benefit in that, going in the right direction, so to speak, the Buddha's teachings are tremendously radical, because it says, you are that, and you can realize that. So I was all armed today. I brought my laptop here. I had this remarkable lecture that T.S. Eliot gave in 1933 about the modern heresies. This is someone who was a Unitarian and then became High Church Anglican. That seems to be the opposite direction that most Buddhists think you should go, but not me. What I love about the Tibetans is not really that they're Tibetan, it's that they preserve the full range of the Dharma. So consequently, it's very skillful. You can find something in there that works for you. And as one thing, or as needs change, it's just the richness, it's the fullness of this. One actually Chinese master said, with my enlightenment, he said, the world became a big bowl of rice. And anytime I was hungry, I just stuck my head in and took a big bite. That works for all these 84,000 teachings too. It's full. Every one of these things is an expression of our true nature, and therefore completely accessible to us. And yet we're so funny as human beings. We have to kind of be, worked into, tricked into. And yet it helps. It helps. Because if the simple thing like counting your malas, counting your prayers or mantra on a mala, in moments of despair or doubt, you can look down at that total. If you keep track of them and you say, oh my goodness, I did 250,000 of those. So you have support. In the formal sadhana practices, the visualization, sadhana means of accomplishment. In the sadhana practices, it's just like hitting us over and over and over again. You are a Buddha. You are a Buddha. Because it knows how we doubt it. It talks about visualizing yourself, and you create the samaya sattva, the commitment being. Well, that's really all you need, really, except they know from experience that what happens? You start saying, wow, this is just pretend. This is just Frank pretending, thinking that he's a Buddha. And so what happens in the visualization? All these have kind of the structure of like a symphony or something. Then suddenly you generate the Jnana Sattva, the wisdom being, the real one, right? Which has to be outside from us, because it can't be me. It's too close. So I put it out there. It's like safer. But then in the visualization, Zahung Bam Ho, there are all sorts of means with your voice, with your mind, with your body, that the wisdom being merges with the Samaya being to give you extra confidence. So it's extremely skillful, but it isn't thought up by some charismatic guy or woman, last week, 1,000 years ago, nothing. These are like direct experiences of the Buddha mind, of even his students thereafter. And so we're in this situation where we're practicing these things that seem often very esoteric. And a lot of people just don't want to go there right now because I think they don't understand it, but that's all right. That's completely all right. It all is completely the mind of the Buddha. It's completely this, best we can say, this vast loving kindness and compassion, this objectless compassion. Compassion is translated, the word we translate as compassion in Tibetan and Sanskrit means removing from the causes, the sources of suffering. It's not just the feeling aspect of compassion. So anyway, all this suddenly, falls on top of our heads here in little humble Rochester, New York. It's a wonderful thing. Okay, that's enough for me. And if Kempo doesn't show up some other Sunday, I'll read T.S. Eliot for everybody's boredom. All right. Any questions? Otherwise, we'll take our tea break and then we'll do a little practice together. Anything? Okay, let's break. We'll ring the bell, as Thoreau says we must.